All right, Joe Harris. How did you first start reading comics, and what were the events that brought you to Comic Book Jones?
Don't lie. We want to know.
Well, the first part, it's kind of lame. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I used to go to I think it was Stride Right. My mother would take me to buy shoes every year for school, right? And I used to buy Zips, these awful sneakers. That's like what we wore like in kindergarten. And they gave us Archie comics right off the bat. So I'd come home with a fistful of Archie, like 5 or 6 books every time I'd go buy new sneakers.
Did you get like a comic per pair of shoes? Your mom was buying you like 5 pairs of shoes?
Well, I think the guy would just give us whatever was behind the counter, but that was the promotion.
Right.
I don't know, I have no idea if this was an official promotion of Archie or what, but that was my first exposure to comics, and after that, I don't think anything really happened in my life until G.I. Joe, and I discovered Uncanny X-Men later.
Right. Well, but before that, the real question, Betty or Veronica? Wow, yeah, you really had to think about this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from that perspective, they're both hot.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
Archer's a smart man.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Exactly. Until they
Did you
Why do I have
know
to
that they did a
choose?
gender swap issue? They did a gender swap issue when Archie was a girl and there was 2 guys. I was like, this dynamic's not the same. It's far from the same. She could just be the crazy chick in high school.
So Archie was your
my gateway.
introduction.
Yes,
Okay.
Archie was my gateway, and then I guess years later it was G.I. Joe and X-Men. Before that, actually, I used to go to this comic book shop on Flatbush Avenue. I can't remember the name of it, but I would dig through the dime bins and pull out lots of House of Secrets.
Uh-huh.
So I'd get exposed to horror comics before I ever got into superheroes.
Uh-huh.
And then years later, it would be G.I. Joe, X-Men. I had a thing for the early issues of that first volume of Marvel's Ghost Rider.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that. And then once I got into high school, it was things were really just starting up with. It was that heyday at Marvel before everyone left and went to Image. So it was Todd coming on, Amazing Spider-Man, and so on and so forth.
Right. Now, did you, as you read them?
Yeah.
Because I've heard other people say, that as they've read them or looked at them, they either started drawing. Did you start drawing the characters?
Never.
No.
Never drew.
No.
But it did almost immediately make me want to write comics. I always wanted to be a writer before I discovered comics, and then once I hit 14 or 15, and it was superheroes, that's when things sort of clicked and turned over for me.
Right. But it was mostly Marvel superheroes?
At first, and then, I guess what really heightened it was then discovering Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, and Sandman was launching, and Green Arrow Longbow Hunters. It was just that period where all these DC prestige books were coming out.
Yeah.
And so I guess it was a step beyond the G.I. Joe and even the Claremont Byrne X-Men, but it was really those mid to late 80s DC books that really made me want to write comics.
So what was your reaction to Killing Joe?
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to pack that much story, that much power into something so slim, it still blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, saying that you felt like you knew that you wanted to be a writer shortly after that, were there certain writers that you started to follow? As opposed to just certain titles?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Alan Moore, obviously, Neil Gaiman. I would go. Once I read The Dark Knight Returns, I immediately went back. I'd go to the local back issue sale, my local LCS, out on Long Island where I was living at the time, and I would just back issue all the Frank Miller Daredevils because that's what I got turned on by, and just appreciate the storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Frank Miller Daredevils. If you didn't read that era at all of comics, I mean, come on, the panel where Bullseye kills Elektra, with a playing card.
It's
just
amazing.
Blew my mind.
Yep.
I mean, you didn't see anything like it in comics at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So did you start to, pen out, your own comics? You know, just make
I
up your own
did. I mean,
characters?
when I was in high school, I probably wrote a lot of stuff that aspired really badly to be Frank Miller.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Do you remember like a character you created?
I do actually. I created a character that became the title of my production company because I had this affection for what a pivotal yet bad character he really was in my development. His name was Night Messiah, and he was something sort of Batmanish. And his costume was half black and half white.
Was there a religious element to it?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. Yeah, I can't give you any more details because I don't know if there were many.
Did he have a superpower though? Or
No, he was
okay.
he was good at breaking bones.
Okay. Yeah.
Blunt force trauma. That was his. Yeah. If that can be considered a superpower.
That works.
It's Batman's.
And what brought you here? Did Tiger or Socko have to like hunt you down in the street or drag?
I got drunk with Socko one night at New York
Yeah.
Comic Con, right? Isn't that pretty
Yeah.
much what happened? Yeah.
Exactly.
Just I've met a lot of interesting people in my lifetime that way, and he's the latest.
Here you are.
Thank you.
Sounds like
Yeah, I think it was at the CBLDF
Yeah,
party.
it was.
The Beat party.
It was indeed.
Yeah. So how was New York Comic Con for you?
New York Comic Con was awesome for me. I set up. It happened to be David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson were both at the show. So.
And you right now writing X-Files season 10.
Exactly. So I became like, you know, if there's Chris Carter, Gillian Anderson, and David Duchovny, if they're the big attractions and X-Filedom, I'm like the little sidecar. Right? but once everybody's done seeing those guys, they came over to see me. So there was this. There were a lot of X-Files from all over the world.
Yeah.
That came by to say hi, and that was fun.
Yeah.
So New York Comic Con, it's my hometown show. I love that show, and this year was particularly fun.
Do you do a lot of traveling around to different cons?
I used for years. I would only go San Diego and New York. And I mean, I've been out to San Diego like 15 times, right? But I've never done the regional shows with the frequency that I've been doing it over the last couple of years.
Okay.
So since Great Pacific, my Image Comics series has come out.
Yes.
You guys should come on the road with me. I've been hitting a lot of the regional shows from Emerald City to C2E2 and
Have you done Baltimore?
no, I have not.
Baltimore, I have to tell you, I mean, if I could say, it's my absolute favorite show because I find it to be the most comic centric.
Okay.
I mean, just
That's what I like
mostly
about Emerald
comics.
City too.
Yeah, no, I've heard that. I haven't been.
I've
to
heard,
Emerald
and I'm going
City.
to go to Rose City in October for the first time. I've heard that's spectacular.
What's that?
It's Portland, and they just merged with Stumptown.
Okay.
I think so. That's becoming one event.
Okay.
And it's another, Portland being such a great comics town now. It's, all the energy I hear is fantastic, and
Cool.
I'm looking forward to going out there this fall.
So now, before we get into Great Pacific, X-Files, you
Right
were
on.
a big fan?
Big fan.
Yeah.
Big fan.
So did you pitch to get the X-Files gig, or?
Well, I had been chatting with Chris Ryle, the editor-in-chief at IDW, and he asked me if I had any interest, and I said, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Of all the properties I could think of, you can probably come up with a lot of things that have a huge following, but the X-Files just struck me as, one, I love it, most importantly, and two, it had been out of circulation enough. I had this idea that if we did it right, it would really resonate.
Yeah.
Because it was must-watch event television before that was cool.
Did you
right?
attend like X-Files parties on Sunday nights?
No,
Like
no.
did?
I mean, unless you count, me and my, beer drinking
Yeah, right.
teenage friends in the '90s.
Yeah.
That was the extent of it. So maybe it's a soft yes.
Yeah.
It was a thing. It was something that teenage guys, and I'm sure plenty of girls, but not in the group I was in at the time, could bond over when they had nothing else to do on Friday nights.
Right.
And it was just a really special series to me. It was one of those things watching, I began to see, not only did I appreciate the thriller elements and the horror and the sci-fi, but I began to see the stagecraft a little bit. You began to see the way they were, even before I knew technically what goes into writing and designing a season and how you switch up expectations once they get to a destination. They would turn everything on its head and we start all over again. What we thought was the truth isn't. Now we're going to have to explore it from a new angle. I began to see that that's what they were doing. I got this notion that they were writers working on this, and so for me, aside from the content, just being aware of the craft that was involved makes that a very special program.
Right. So when Chris approaches you and says, "Is it something you'd be interested in?"
Right.
From a writer's point of view, how quickly do the wheels start turning? Of shit, man, I can do this and I can do that.
In general, as a writer, when I'm working, there's two ways things go, right? When you're writing, sometimes it's like you feel so brilliant and genius because it just comes to you and most of the heavy lifting is done. I just have to now execute it and get it out. And then there are those things where you have to toil and you're never completely, at least in my case, I've got to keep working at it, and I never feel completely sold on it. And I just have to trust that all the work I put into something is going to pay off and people are going to respond to it well. With X-Files, fortunately, it kind of my brain lit up like a Christmas tree, and in about a day and a half, I banged out a take for what became eventually the first 5-issue arc, Believers, that was actually released as the hardcover that came out today.
Yeah.
And IDW loved it. I guess whatever they had been looking at and what Fox had been considering wasn't really doing it for them. So IDW loved it. Fox was over the moon about it, loved the direction I was going to go in, and then it filtered down. It got to Chris Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was my next question. Is it like with Joss Whedon and Buffy? Does he have to approve everything?
Well, here's the thing. When we started doing this, Chris Carter was not involved, and Fox called IDW into a meeting, and Chris Ryall showed up at a meeting surprised to find Chris Carter there and said, "So tell me what you want to do with the X-Files." And Chris pitched him my pitch, and they sent him home with the little series Bible that I had put together. And after that, Chris Carter and I had a call, and he was so effusive and complimentary and appreciative of the fact that I obviously respected this so much, and I do. I take it very seriously, and so it's been a really good relationship in that regard. Chris Carter, he sees everything we want to do. He's actually tweaked, especially in the first series. He steered us away from one plot point I wanted to build toward, which I think was the right thing to do. And he's offered his critiques and notes throughout this process, but he's been really appreciative, and I think he's enjoyed this very much. Whenever we do like a panel or something together, he's always so complimentary. I have to resist smiling too hard. I'm like Marky Mark in Rockstar, like try not to smile too much when we're taking publicity photos, but. Fun time.
Is there a fear though? Like taking on something like this, is there a fear of being in contact with somebody like Chris Carter and worrying that, he may want to give me way too many notes, or you know what I mean?
Well, no, because so far that hasn't been the case at all. He's been pretty hands off in terms of what I can or can't do, and I think at this point he trusts me to handle this stuff. Honestly, I was scared to death of the fans going in. As soon as it was announced that we were doing this.
That's funny because that was a question I was going to ask you. You're afraid of the fans.
Yeah, I was as soon as this was announced, I went down to Heroes Con, and the book wouldn't be out for like another month or two. And this woman came up to my table to say hi, and she was so excited. I'm the biggest. And I meet people like this all the time. Usually, it's women who just love the X-Files and they tell me their personal stories with the show. They tell me what what it's meant to them, and
David
this
Duchovny is a pretty man.
he is indeed.
I wasn't reading them in person.
So, but to cut to the quick, this woman came up to me at Heroes Con and she went on and on and on about what the show means to her and so on and so forth. I'm nodding along, having a great time. She looks at me in the eye and she goes, "Don't fuck it up."
Wow.
And I said, "Okay." And so I was.
But I gotta imagine that's gotta carry more weight than
Oh, I was scared
Yeah.
to death.
either
The
Chris
conversation-
or Chris saying the same
Totally,
thing to
because,
you.
because well, the thing is, I know Chris liked it, but that doesn't mean that woman's going to like it.
Right.
And I have to believe there are many of her
Right.
out there with that same sentiment. I want this to be what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine we've made everyone happy with this book. That would be impossible, and I don't sweat that. I know going into this, I tried to get to this place of acceptance where I had no idea what the reaction was going to be. I liked what we were doing. Everyone else liked what we were doing, so if it didn't work, I felt like it would just be one of those things that didn't work, but fortunately it has worked, and that's been a relief.
I mean, it's funny, like, we've had people come in here when X-Files started and start a pull list strictly for X-Files.
Yeah, I know, and it's got
Every
that
cover.
crossover appeal. I've
Yeah.
heard that a lot,
Where they
especially
just-
from retailers.
They
yeah.
just, I just want every X. And I'm actually surprised at the one guy who gets
Yeah.
he didn't show up tonight. But it's got to be a lot of pressure, and you seem to be handling it brilliantly because the book is great.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work considering it's both the most rewarding work for hire experience I've ever had, and I mean, it is a lot of work. For every issue I write, I'm constantly watching episodes for reference, if nothing else. I've gotten really good at jogging through episodes on my iPad.
Yeah.
On Netflix, you can scan through thumbnails pretty easily. So I've got to find a scene where Smoking Man and Mulder are doing
Yeah.
one thing or another, and I forgot where it is. It's pretty easy for me to find some
Yeah.
of a reference. But it is rewarding. It's nice to work on a franchise that is so well regarded and scratch an itch for some people that they've wanted scratched for a while that they haven't, and they haven't been getting it. So that feels good.
Yeah.
So for whatever work there is that goes in, I've gotten over being scared to death as I was for a while, and now I'm just I'm pretty confident in what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, is this something that you can see yourself doing for a long time?
I think so. I mean, I mean, first and foremost, I want to be creating more original comics, and I'm going to be doing that. But as far as I mean, for lack of a more elegant way to put it, it's one of the best jobs, day jobs, I guess. I mean, I dig it. I really enjoy doing it. I love putting words in Mulder and Scully's mouths. It's a thrill. I mean, I enjoy writing this book more than I've enjoyed writing any superhero book, for instance, before. It's just come more.
So X-Files is better than Batman.
For me, it is. I mean, I've done it more. I mean, not that I don't want to write more Batman or more superheroes in general, because there's lots of things I want to do, but at this point, I have no plans to leave this. It's just too gratifying.
I just think even saw it on the TV show, so you could imagine anyone who watched the TV show, you see it in the comic as well, is just the interaction between Mulder and Scully. I think they're just great characters to have to play with. But just to segue here, kind of, because I've thought about the fact that, gee, imagine if an X-File of the Great Pacific came across the desk of Mulder and Scully.
Oh.
I think
That's pretty good.
That would be pretty
That's a good
interesting. So as far as the Great Pacific goes, is it something that's been in your head for a long time? Is it something that I don't know? I mean, how near and dear is the Great Pacific to you?
I guess it was. I guess I first thought of Great Pacific a couple of years before it came out, and I tried to get it set up at a few different places. I tried to a few different publishers who will remain nameless put me through some paces on it, and it ultimately didn't pan out. At the same time, we were exploring entertainment possibilities, production companies and stuff for potential movie and TV, because I'm well represented, and everyone who works with me thought that it was a great idea that we should be doing something with. But I'm glad it didn't happen until it happened, because I would not have found Martin Marazzo, my collaborator, who is brilliant, and so everything worked out on that front.
Just really quick for listeners who might not have read the book yet, what is the basic premise for Great Pacific?
Great Pacific is a monthly title I write for Image Comics. It's, I guess genre-wise, it is a sci-fi environmental adventure. It's about the heir to one of the largest oil fortunes in the world, who, on the eve of his 21st birthday, when he's due to inherit controlling interest in the company, he throws it all away and instead heads out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which, for those who don't know, is this environmental catastrophe in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that we've sort of hyper-realized a bit to make into this giant floating continent of plastic.
It exists. I mean, it is something that exists.
It exists. Scientists estimate it is over twice the size of Texas.
Yeah.
And this character named Chaz Worthington, who's the latest in a line of heirs to this oil fortune.
Great name, by the way.
He sees himself as the heir, as further the heir to Thomas Edison and Andrew Carnegie and J.P. Morgan, like American industrialist. He goes out there, plants a flag, and declares it his own sovereign country. And in doing so, he never imagines the myriad threats he's going to have to face, like mutated marine life. He's going to deal with like this giant octopus that stalks him from underneath the plastic crust. He's going to deal with pirates. The United States Navy comes after him at one point. Somehow survive all these both natural and unnatural threats, and then realize this dream, this vision of founding his own society and building this little settlement that he names New Texas, as sort of a little dig at the state he left from, Texas. He's out to build this into a nation, and going forward, it's all about both, dealing with the environmental aspect and realizing this dream of building this country up.
Now, with a series like that, and I guess with a lot, do you have an end game in mind?
Yeah, kinda. I do have an end game. Nothing lasts forever, right? And especially when you're dealing with creator-owned comics. I think one of the cooler things about doing a book at Image is that it's going to end eventually, I think. I mean, aside, The Walking Dead can go on forever maybe, but these things have a shelf life.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these books start really, really strong, and then they drop off, and that's not indicative of the quality of them at all.
Jonathan Lehman actually just had a public announcement that he's questioning if Chews lasted too long.
Yeah.
Like that's a sign.
Chews are awesome.
Chews continue to be good, but
It's like on a 60 though.
Chew is an anomalous too. I mean, it's how many issues is that at
30.
now?
So yeah, something like that.
38, 39.
It's supposed to go up to
years.
60.
he wants it to go to 60. But yeah,
I mean, but already so far, you've thrown so many questions out there.
Yeah.
Unanswered questions in Great Pacific. That,
there's a lot you can do.
If you love mystery, I mean, it's a great book. I mean, I know that one of our regulars tonight, who's a big fan, Chad Wallace, who was here, and after you had signed his books, he stepped outside and he's like, "Man, there's so many questions I want him to fucking answer for me." And I know he's not gonna fucking answer them,
Oh God.
Chad loves.
He's like, "I have so many questions." Yeah, when we put on Facebook that Joe was going to be here, he said, "Fuck yeah, I love me some Great Pacific." Yeah, that was his comment on it.
Yeah, Chad's a good guy.
But
That's funny. That's funny. I mean, but to answer your question, yes, I do have an end game. I'm not ready to get to it yet, but
Yeah.
we'll get to it.
It's good. I figured it's good not to have an issue number in mind, but more story-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do it as long as the market will support it. As
Yeah.
long as it's not costing me money.
Yeah, to
I'll
put out
keep
your
doing
own work.
it. Yeah, because I didn't start Great Pacific in and of itself to get rich publishing the comics.
Yeah.
You know, there's been, you know, there are other things we're hoping to do with it beyond publishing that we're excited for. Hopefully 2014 will have some news on that front.
That'd be cool.
That's pretty
I
awesome.
can see that as many different things.
Yeah, I mean, it lends itself to a few different directions.
A cool sandbox
You can
game.
Yeah, you can go a lot of different ways. The transmedia,
Yeah.
as the word is these days. Yeah, I mean, as long as the market will support us, I want to keep doing it because it's a world I do like building. I love, you know, it takes a lot of things I love into account. It's about geopolitics and it's about leadership and the burdens of leadership and how that, you know, how the best of intentions can lead to the corruption of somebody. These are all things I want to be exploring. So, you know, that's where we're going.
Awesome.
You know, market willing.
So you said 2014. Any news? Has it been officially optioned yet, or?
No.
Any ideas you can kind of hint towards?
No, other than, you know, we're entertaining
Perfect.
talk from a few different people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vagueness is fine right now.
Yeah,
Especially,
that's
especially
fine.
nothing's in concrete.
Yeah, I feel no rush to do anything. I think that there have been quite a few people who've responded really well to it, so something will come of that.
I mean,
Cool.
you know, the thing is, we ordered really well on both trades of Great Pacific, and we don't have any in house. So anybody who's listening, I mean, if that isn't a clue, I don't know what is.
First one's only $10.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know,
And
it's
it's-
six full size, 6 over. You know, one issue is like an issue and a half, so you're getting 6.5 issues for $10. Not no, you know, most image series only give you 5.
Not at our store, you know, because first volumes are always 20% off.
Nice.
So,
And so, I believe, as Brian K. Vaughan said about Saga Volume 1, the crack-addictingly low price.
yeah,
Yeah.
$7.99.
absolutely. So now, as far as Great Pacific's Great Pacific goes,
Right.
all right, we're 12 issues in, and we're definitely going to see a lot more of it coming down the pipe, as long as people want to stick with it. It's not going anywhere. It's going
No.
to stick around. All right, fantastic.
No. I guess we're in a position, you know, when you're making an indie book like this, it's year to year, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna have to assess where things are.
I mean, the reason I ask is because there's plenty of people who love certain books and that it's taken away from them for a break
Yeah.
or whatever, as Saga was from Volume 1 to Volume 2.
Yeah,
so there's no
break.
break coming up or...
We're on a break. We're on a short break now. I mean,
Okay.
we put out the trade now, and we'll be back the first week of February.
So you took a month
that's,
off.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's really not a break. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
How much is Saga?
It's not an American
Saga, well,
vampire.
Saga was what?
Saga was a good 4 months the
Yeah,
first time and
that was
like
like-
5 months the second.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Every
Yeah.
time a trades come out,
I
he
didn't
said
know
that he
that.
wants to give everyone a.
Joe, my question wasn't if it was getting canceled. It was
Yeah.
just like, you know, you're taking
No, we don't
because
have
it happens a lot of times.
We don't
with
have that.
indie
We
books,
don't
yeah.
have. We can't take those fancy luxuries. No,
Yeah.
we got to get back to work.
American
We gotta
Vampire
sit-
took,
we got to
13
punch that
months.
clock.
So now what?
prefer-
Is there anything you could tease for Great Pacific?
You know, what kind of? I mean, we've got a bunch of single issue stories coming up, and then a shorter arc that lights this fuse. There was this storyline in the first arc, Trash, that involved this cache of nuclear weapons that Chaz had
That's coming
discovered.
back. Good.
Yeah, that's gonna make a return.
So that was a question I had.
We're gonna explore this idea of you know, I don't want to tread on other image series titles, but this idea of manifest destiny, whereas society is sort of pushing out, looking to sort of populate more of this trash
Who's the
continent.
ruler?
You know, there are also other people living there, and much like, you know, when America was expanding westward
Yes.
and the Indians were in the way,
Mhm.
this is something we're gonna explore a little bit more, and we're gonna get into the tensions and, you know, the potential for civil unrest and civil war.
Yeah.
the sort of growing pains any ambitiously expansive country is gonna go through. We want to put Great Pacific through.
Very cool.
So we've got I've got a bunch of variant covers coming up from different artists. I've got Adam Polina, Steve Ralston, Derek Robertson's gonna be coming on board for a cover. Yeah.
Very cool.
Now, I just have one quick question about process.
Mm-hmm.
I read the first issue of a miniseries you did for Ani a couple of years ago called Spontaneous,
Mm-hmm.
which
That was awesome.
Oni. And the artist was Brett Weldell. Am I pronouncing it? Weldelay. Okay, I had to get it wrong. And he had a very, very unique art style.
Yeah, he's awesome.
How much of that was intended in the writing, or how much of that did he come up with on his own?
Well, I mean, I tend to script really tightly. I'm not. My attitude is always, if you've got a better way to build this mousetrap, we're going to collaborate and do it, and that's fine. But I tend to give people a really tight script. I direct the movie on paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I look at it. Now, what Brett brought to it, he stayed pretty faithful to what I had scripted in terms of layouts and shot-by-shot storytelling, but he added all these amazing textures, and he gave it this depth that was all him. I mean, he works with paint and distressed colors and
yeah, because the color is very saturated. It almost feels like cigarette stains.
Yeah, that's why he's kind of like a mad scientist in how he puts together all those textures on the page, and that was all him. And he really built the look of that thing.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
You seem like somebody that would have a really close relationship with whatever artist
Typically,
is working.
Typically, I do.
It's better than being like, I guess I could call him. It's like
no. I mean, on the creator-owned stuff, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's integral.
We are a team, like literally a creative
Yeah,
team.
and on the X-Files, we work really tightly.
Yeah.
And typically, me and even now, we're going through a couple of guest artists right now. I mean, we've got who am I working with on the X-Files now? Now that Michael Walsh is leaving us after next issue because he's moving on to Secret Avengers at Marvel.
Oh,
that's cool.
You guys know that though, right? He's already been announced.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he's got one more issue of X-Files.
If not, we just got an exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think it's any big secret that he's leaving the X-Files, and we'll miss him dearly because he's awesome.
but I hate to say I'm looking forward to those issues of Secret Avengers.
Oh well, hey, that's
Yeah.
cool.
I like his art.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
He's great, and one thing with Michael, I feel like we've been able to work on the X-Files in a way that didn't just feel like a retro greatest hits version.
It doesn't feel like the classic comics.
No, I think it hits some of those notes in the ways that it should. But I feel like we're like this little indie band, like Michael Jordy and I, with Jordy Belair, who's one of the most wonderful colorists and one of the most wonderful people in this business that I know. And we've been able to carve out our own little artistic space within this franchise that is the X-Files. But we've got Menton Matthews is going to be drawing.
Awesome.
He's going to be drawing a cigarette smoking man issue coming up.
Cool.
So the people I work with, typically, we work really well together. Sometimes on work for hire stuff, it becomes a little bit more. I turn in the script. I see the pages later. I might never talk to the artist. I mean, sometimes that's just the nature of the way the comics get produced, especially when you're talking about Marvel or DC. But on the creator-owned stuff, we're close.
Yeah.
Everybody works really closely together. I work with guys from all over the world. Martin Marazza's in Buenos Aires.
Yeah. Little power of Skype and the internet.
Yeah. Not even just email.
Just in general.
But we work. At this point, we're in the same trench, even if we're thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is Martin somebody that you found, or?
Yeah, I found him on Zuda.
Okay.
Actually, he had done a strip for DC's old online imprint, right? Zuda. He did a strip called Absolute Magnitude, and I just went looking for someone to collaborate with because I knew on Great Pacific what I wanted if I could work with anybody. If I could have my pick, I wanted to work with Mobius.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Okay. So obviously that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that he's not alive.
Thus my.
And you know, and I had a feeling Jeff Darrow was out of my price range, but I went looking just to see what I could see, and I
Fuck, could you imagine Great Pacific? Jeff Darrow.
My mind just like.
Oh,
mine does that all the
writing
time.
his art. That would
Mine
be
does that all the
fucking
time.
great.
But when I saw Martine, I knew he just brought this international thing. It looked like something
It's something you
you'd
don't
see
see.
in like a Human Rights Press book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like something that had been around since the 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is.
I'm so glad you said humanoids. It's just because it really is. It's something that a lot of people don't explore, man. A lot of the humanoid stuff. But go on.
So anyway, that was how I found it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the process of finding Martine.
Do you want to talk at all about your book Ghost Project?
What would you like to know about Ghost Project?
Well, you're
Another Oni book.
discussing some future stuff with that before.
Well, Ghost Project is the first thing I did. Well, I guess I did a few like fill-ins for DC, but when I got back into, I had left comics at one point. I was a
Okay.
young guy working at Marvel, and I had sold a horror movie, and I had sort of stopped making comics for a few years.
What horror movie?
I created and co-wrote a movie that Sony released called Darkness Falls.
Really? That's what you?
Yeah,
It's awesome.
yeah. It's actually based on a short film that I wrote and directed.
That same customer that I told you said, I love me some Great Pacific. But I told him outside, I'm like, he did Darkness Falls too. He's like, get the fuck out of here, because I know Chad is a huge horror fan. He's like, I would have brought my DVD.
Yeah.
I told him to go home, but he said his wife wouldn't let him come back.
No, I said, so run home, and he's like, nah. It's like, I can't go home. My wife would get pissed at me.
I worked on a few horror movies. I made a movie called The Tripper a couple years after that.
Was that the
Ronald Reagan
Reagan
series.
with
Yeah,
an axe?
I remember
that
that.
movie's awesome.
I remember the trailer.
Sorry.
I like that movie.
Yeah, I love
have
that
to
film.
say. I like that. That was David Arquette's idea.
Yeah.
And it was a good one. And I wrote a bunch of things that didn't get made, but I got paid for, and a bunch of things that did get made that I didn't get credited for because that's the nature of the work. But I missed making comics, and comics had changed so much since I'd been out of the industry, and I had this enormous amount of ideas that I wanted to realize, and I decided I wanted to get back into comics, and the first one I had was Ghost Project, and Steve Ralston had a deal, he had a relationship with Oni Press because he had been the first artist on Queen and Country, and we decided we were going to bring this to Oni, and Oni loved it, and they published it back in 2010, I guess. A 5-issue miniseries. Didn't sell all that great, but it was fairly well received, And
I loved it.
But a lot of
I picked it out of the
It was wonderfully
the
creepy.
50-cent bins we had here, and I really liked it.
Oh, thank you. Well, right off the bat, it was getting a lot of attention from studios, and our Onis and mine, our producing partners, were taking a lot of. I was having a lot of interesting calls and a lot of interesting people that wanted to make a movie out of it, wanted to make TV out of it. It was at Sci-Fi at one point. It was being developed for a show, and that didn't work out. And I say fortunately because as of a few months ago, NBC bought it, and it's now being developed. Knock on wood or plastic, whatever the saying is. And it's now being developed. And John Glenn, who wrote and produced the Hatfields McCoys miniseries last year, is writing the pilot. Pilot is going to be directed by Andre Overdahl, who made Troll Hunter, which is one of the great horror movies of the last few years.
Oh, you just start from the crowd. Oh, that was awesome. But you know, my question is, how do you take a 5-issue limited series and make it a series on television?
That's that's what we all get paid to think
Right.
of, and.
Well, I mean, morons like me and us and the people who listen to this podcast, it's something that's a concept that's completely beyond us.
Well, I mean, it's being developed now, and it's going to go much along the track that another Oni property, the Six Gun, went along.
Oh, yeah,
NBC
Colin
last
Bunn,
year.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, and they pretty much got right to the end, which was before, you know, heartbreakingly, it didn't actually get picked up for series. But that's the way TV works. You know, the studio has, you know, pays for the script to be written, and then they evaluate the script and see what they could do on budget. And if they like it and they want to put money into it, they cast it, they shoot the pilot, then they evaluate that, and they hold that up against all the other pilots. They do that, you know, that particular pilot season, and from, you know, however many they've produced, they whittle it down to like 1 or 2 for the open time slot they have.
Yeah.
And that's just what TV is. So that's where we are.
It's interesting though that you're right now. One of the more popular comics you're working on is X-Files season 10, which you know, Chris Carter, and now right now in your life you're going through the opposite, where you're taking a comic and creating a TV series. You know what I mean? Out of it. Which I mean, it's funny. Like, would you talk to? I mean, would you talk to Chris about it? Like, hey, man, my life's going in the opposite direction right now. You know?
Yeah, we haven't talked. Ghost Project hasn't come up between us. He's got his own. I mean, he's got a new show on Amazon called The After, which I'm excited to see.
I mean, is it hard to see? You know, something you created, and then it's like, okay, I'm handing it over, and
yeah, you know, yes and no. It's also, I've been through this so many times. Both, I've been down this road in film and in television so often that you see so many things break up on the rocks as it goes for reasons that you can't control, and you realize that to get to the finish line is so. It's an accomplishment. It's both a reflection of the hard work and talent, and also an example of just how damn fortunate sometimes you can be. Because, I mean, before I had ever been to Los Angeles, I had a movie that was on the verge of being greenlit. That's how lucky I was with what became Darkness Falls. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting down with agents when I was looking. I didn't have representation at the time. It was a really, really...
it's got to be terrifying.
It was awesome, and it was also daunting because I had no idea how to navigate this world. And I sat down in front of in a conference room full of agents who told me, "Do you realize how lucky you are? We have clients that make, you know, $2-3 million a year and have never had to produce credit. Mm-hmm. They get paid to write things that eventually don't pan out because that sometimes happens." And so I've had some good fortune, and I've had some intangible knack for creating things that people gravitate toward in some capacity or another, and it's both. Sometimes I'm both amazed and horrified by how little I really know is going on. It's kind of like I do whatever it is I do, and then these forces that I can't possibly control are at work. Yeah, it creates for an interesting. I've gotten a lot better, so I'm not so terrified about it anymore. But it's interesting. It's not for the faint of heart.
You mentioned before that you had missed comics.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you have a preference, a medium to work in?
Well, I mean, if I like everything, I really do. I mean, if I could make movies unfettered, I'd love to keep making movies. I mean, that's awesome. You reach more people. You see your name on the big screen. I mean, that's an incredible experience. But the immediacy of comics is something that is unparalleled in my experience. How quickly you get something out on the stands once you actually get it set up and you start the process of creating a series and moving it toward publication. Just the interaction with fans, with publishers, with you go to conventions and people who are within this industry are pretty big stars are still just people. Right. You know, you go to the bar, you drink with them. They're not, you know, sometimes people have egos because, you know, there's some cool stuff that happens in comics certainly that can get some people puffed up a bit, but it's a pretty down-to-earth business, and I really like that. I like the immediacy, the transactional nature of I create this, then I come out and promote it, and even on its best day, comics only reach like a 50th of a bad television show, right? I mean, just the numbers, and it's just what it is. And but that lends itself to just some really close proximity between consumer and producer, and I really dig that.
What advice would you have for aspiring writers? Anybody who wants to?
I mean,
get a comic out there?
sounds cliche, but I mean, obviously, you got to write, read. Don't just read comics. Study storytelling. Watch classic films. Understand the vocabulary of telling a story. You should start if you're doing your homework. You should start to see the strings. And understand why a director makes a choice as opposed to another choice and what's being accomplished. Those are the sorts of things you should start picking up on if in fact you're going to be doing this. And just do it, because it's never been easier to make comics. You can find an artist on DeviantArt and you can realize your vision, and you can publish your webcomic on a Tumblr blog, and if it's good, you could see how other people are successful, and you can emulate that, and you should be able to reach people. I mean, it's not like, once upon a time, that was a really daunting thing to do, to actually create comics that, you weren't being paid by Marvel or DC to make. And, nowadays there's, I just say do it. I mean, be fearless, and if it doesn't work, do it again, because you should always be learning from your failures, not your successes, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
So what was the first project you worked on that you were like, fuck, oh my god, I'm writing comics?
I did. I had gotten out of film school years ago, and I had made this short film that had it was my thesis, that had played a bunch of festivals and had won a few small awards, and I had a screening at the Tribeca Film Center. And one of my best friends from childhood is Adam Polina, who once upon a time he used to draw X-Force from Marvel. And, he brought some editors from Marvel at the time down to the screening, and we went out afterwards and hit it off, and they said, we like what you do, we think you should be working for us. And I started, the first thing I wrote for Marvel was an X-Force inventory story. It was X-Force number 77 that Adam drew. And it was really well received. I mean, and Marvel back then was kind of, if you did quality work, you really popped back then, because it was a kind of a dreary place. They were still in bankruptcy, and there were opportunities if you somehow got under the fence, and I got under the fence. And so X-Force was my first book, and then I had written a bunch of other little fill-in issues in different X books.
And as somebody who was a huge fan of the X-Men books.
Sure. No, I thought I had something to add, at that time with so far as mutants and all that. I thought I had stories to tell that were unlike what might have been told at the time. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. It's hard for me to put myself back in that mental space, but from there, I wrote a book called Slingers, which was a Spidey spin-off back then, and Bishop the Last X-Man, and all sorts of other things, miniseries and annuals and stuff like that. So it was, it was amazing, obviously. I mean, to be able to go into my neighborhood comic shop back then and that was an amazing thing. To say that's mine, that's cool.
See, I did have one question though about, you brought up Bishop the Last X-Men. Is it?
Right.
Is Bishop a favorite character of yours? I mean, did it come from that, or did it come from them saying to you,
"Hey, you gave the face told too much.
We need a Bishop book"?
Yeah, they were doing it. I mean, back then, maybe it's like this now. I don't know, but they were doing a Bishop book, and sure, I want the monthly gigs.
Yeah.
So. Then it's a matter of what I want to do and what the company intends for it to be, and somehow in that back and forth is what came out. And I don't remember exactly I don't remember what spawned it, like why we specifically did it that way. I'm pretty sure it was editorials from on high had a specific objective with it, and then I was left to connect the dots, and that was Bishop the Last X-Man.
Can you draw?
Not in the least.
I think you're honest.
I think it's great. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.